The night my wife left for a date with her boss, I didn't beg. I packed. When she came home, I was gone, with the business, the dignity, and her son's loyalty. She thought I'd fall apart. Instead, I thrived while she lost everything. Job, house, reputation. Her affair partner ghosted her after stealing $38,000. My name is Dominic Marshall. I'm 45 years old, and I own 3 successful bars in downtown Portland. Started with one dive 15 years ago and built it into something people actually want to visit. The kind of places where regulars know your name and the staff feels like family. Good craft beer, decent food, live music on weekends. I took pride in that. Still do. I met Stephanie 12 years back when she walked into my second location for a corporate happy hour. She was 28 then, recently divorced with a 5-year-old son named Lucas. The kid's father, Brett Randall, had walked out when Lucas was 2. Just packed up and disappeared to Seattle to chase some tech startup dream that never materialized. Left them with nothing but child support checks that came late more often than not. Stephanie was different from anyone I dated. Sharp, ambitious, working her way up in B2B sales. She didn't need saving, which I respected. She wanted a partner, not a rescuer. But Lucas, man, that kid grabbed my heart from day one. Quiet, smart, always watching. Like he was waiting to see if I'd bail too. Testing the waters before he'd let himself trust. I didn't bail. I showed up. Every school play, every baseball game, every midnight fever when he'd wake up crying. I became his dad in every way that mattered. We built things together in the garage on Saturdays, argued about homework and grades, had those awkward talks about girls and dating. By the time he turned 17, he'd stopped calling me Dominic years ago. It was just Dad. That meant more to me than any of the bars ever could. The night it all fell apart was a Tuesday in March. Nothing special about it. I closed up the main bar early, came home around 9. Stephanie was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, stirring pasta sauce that had already started burning at the edges. She didn't look up when I walked in, didn't acknowledge me at all. I loosened my tie, asked her how her day went. She kept stirring that sauce, watching it bubble like it held the secrets of the universe. Then she turned off the stove with deliberate slowness. When she finally faced me, her expression was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before something breaks wide open. She said she needed to tell me something. My stomach dropped, but I stayed quiet. Waited. Then she hit me with it. No build-up, no apology, no emotion. I'm going on a date with my supervisor, Stephanie said, her voice steady as concrete. Grant Floyd. We've been talking for a few months now, and I want to see where this goes. 12 years. 12 years of showing up every single day, of raising her son like he was mine, of building a life together. And she stood there in our kitchen like she was announcing a dentist appointment. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just clarity. Crystal clear understanding of what was happening and what came next. Walk out that door tonight, I said quietly, meeting her eyes, and everything changes. You understand that. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just picked up her purse from the counter, slipped on her jacket, checked her reflection in the microwave door, and left without another word. The front door closed with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam ever could. I didn't move for a long time after she left. Just stood there in the kitchen with that burnt pasta smell filling the air and the clock ticking loud enough to hear my own heartbeat underneath it. My phone buzzed twice. Probably her, already spinning some story about how I overreacted or didn't understand. I didn't check. Instead, I walked upstairs to Lucas's room. His door was half open, lights spilling into the hallway. He sat at his desk, calculus textbook open, pencil tapping against the page in that rhythm he'd had since middle school. Kid was sharp, already had acceptance letters from 3 universities, planning to study mechanical engineering. I'd helped him with the applications, wrote one of his recommendation letters through a friend who worked admissions. Lucas looked up when I knocked on the doorframe. Hey, Dad. Mom leave already? The question hit different than he meant it to. Like he'd been expecting this. Maybe he had. Yeah, she left, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You doing okay with that calc? He shrugged. It's derivatives. Not terrible. We made small talk for a few minutes. I asked about his girlfriend, Emily. He asked if a new bartender at the 3rd Street location was working out. Normal stuff. But underneath it, I could see him watching me, reading the situation the way smart kids do when their parents think they're oblivious. Finally, he set down his pencil. Dad, what's going on? You got that look. I came in, sat on the edge of his bed, took a breath. Lucas was 17, not 7. He deserved the truth, or at least a version of it that wouldn't destroy him before his AP exams. Your mom and I are going through some stuff, I said carefully. She's seeing someone from work. She told me tonight. Lucas's jaw tightened. He looked down at his textbook, at the equations that suddenly didn't matter at all. Grant Floyd. My stomach dropped. You knew. I've heard her on the phone, Lucas said quietly. His voice had that edge to it, the one that meant he was trying not to show how much something hurt. Late at night, when she thought everyone was asleep. Laughing different. Talking different. I'm not stupid, Dad. I felt something shift in my chest. This kid had been carrying this weight alone, not wanting to burden anyone. Protecting me maybe. Or protecting himself. How long? I asked. Couple months, I think. Maybe since January. He finally looked at me, and I saw Brett Randall's eyes staring back. But the expression was different. Hurt, yeah, but also something harder. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I could fight for a marriage that was already dead. Could beg her to come back. To choose us. To remember what we built. Could make myself smaller and smaller, until maybe she'd decide I was worth keeping around. Or I could walk away with my head up. I'm not going to be the guy who waits around hoping she changes her mind, I said. That's not who I am. And that's not what you need to see. Lucas nodded slowly. Good. Because honestly, Dad, she doesn't deserve you. The words shouldn't have mattered as much as they did. But coming from him, from this kid I'd raised, they felt like permission. Like validation that what I was feeling wasn't crazy or weak. I stood up, put my hand on his shoulder. You know none of this is your fault, right? You and me, we're solid. That doesn't change. I know, he said, but his voice shook just a little. Are you leaving? I don't know yet, I admitted. But whatever happens, you're going to be okay. We both are. I left him there with his calculus and went back downstairs. The house felt different now. Empty in a way it hadn't been before. I pulled out my laptop, opened a document, and started making a list. First item, call my lawyer tomorrow morning. Second, talk to my accountant about the bars and our joint accounts. Third, figure out how to dismantle a life without burning it all down. By the time Stephanie came home at 1 a.m, smelling like wine and cologne that wasn't mine, I was already halfway through my plan. She stood in the bedroom doorway, watching me type. We need to talk, she said. I didn't look up. No, we really don't. Wednesday morning, I was at my lawyer's office by 8. David Kowalski had handled the business paperwork when I bought my third bar. Smart guy, straightforward, didn't waste time on sympathy when you needed strategy. 12 years married, 1 stepson you've raised since age 5, 3 successful businesses, David said, reviewing the notes I'd sent over. And she works in B2B sales, making what, about $90,000 a year? Closer to 105 now, I said. She got promoted last year. Regional sales manager. David's eyebrow went up. So she's been out earning you for how long? 2 years, maybe 3. The bars do well, but I pay myself a modest salary to keep more capital in the businesses. Around $75,000 on paper. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Dominic, you know what that means in Oregon, right? Community property state. Given her higher income over the past few years, you could potentially claim spousal support. I thought about this at 3 a.m. while making my list. I could, but I won't. I don't want her money. I want out clean. Noble, David said. Expensive, but noble. What about the bars? All 3 were mine before we married. She's not on any of the business licenses or accounts, but I want to make sure she can't claim any stake in them. She won't be able to, he confirmed. Premarital assets remain separate. What about Lucas? That was the part that mattered. He's 17, almost 18. Not legally mine, but he's been mine in every way that counts. I've paid for his car, his insurance, his college fund. I want to keep supporting him through university. David made notes. That's going to be tricky. You have no legal obligation since you never formally adopted him, but you can set up a trust or continue payments voluntarily. Just know she can't force you to. I know. I'm doing it anyway. We spent the next hour going through assets. The house was in both our names, bought 8 years ago. I'd put down the $60,000 down payment from bar profits. She contributed to the mortgage, but less than half of what I had. David said we could negotiate, but it would get ugly. Or, I said, I signed the house over to her completely. Clear title. No fight. David looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Dominic, that house is worth $480,000. You'd be walking away from over $200,000 in equity. I'm walking away from a marriage that's already dead, I said. I don't want to spend 6 months fighting over furniture and square footage. I want out. I want it fast. And I want Lucas to see that a man can leave with his dignity intact. David sighed but started drafting the paperwork. You're making this too easy for her. No, I corrected. I'm making it hard for her to paint me as the villain. There's a difference. By noon, I had a plan. Stephanie would get the house, her car, all the furniture. I'd take my clothes, my personal items, and my freedom. Joint accounts would be split down the middle. I'd continue paying for Lucas's college, but through a direct trust that she couldn't touch. When I got home, Stephanie was in the living room on her laptop. Working from home, she'd said, more likely coordinating with Grant Floyd. I set the folder on the coffee table in front of her. Divorce papers. Look them over. She opened it slowly. Started reading. Her face went from confident to confused to stunned. You're giving me the house? She asked. It's easier this way. And you're setting up a college fund for Lucas that I can't access? That's right, I said. The money's for him, not you. He's got acceptance letters from 3 schools. I'm making sure he can go wherever he wants without worrying about tuition. Stephanie looked up at me, and for the first time since Tuesday night, I saw something like regret flicker across her face. Dominic, we can work through this. It was one date. We don't have to blow up our whole life over. One date, I interrupted, that you've been building up to for months. Lucas heard you on the phone with Grant. Late night calls. Different laugh. He's known since January. Stephanie, our 17-year-old son has been carrying that weight while you played house with us during the day and something else at night. She went pale. Lucas knew. Yeah, and you know what he said to me last night? That you don't deserve me. That's what your son thinks. I headed toward the stairs. I'm packing. I'll be out by the weekend. Sign the papers or don't. Either way, I'm done. Thursday morning, Lucas came downstairs early. I was at the kitchen table with coffee and my laptop, sending emails to my bar managers about covering my shifts for the next few days. He grabbed a protein bar, sat across from me. Dad, I need to tell you something, he said. I closed the laptop. What's up? Brett called me last night. His voice was tight. My biological father said he heard through someone that you and Mom were splitting up. He wants to meet. Reconnect. Of course he did. Brett Randall, who'd spent 15 years being a ghost, suddenly wanted to play dad now that things were falling apart. What did you tell him? I asked carefully. That I'd think about it. Lucas picked at the protein bar wrapper. I don't know, Dad. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. But another part wonders, what if he's changed? What if he actually wants to be in my life now? This was the conversation I'd been dreading. The one where I had to be the bigger man and not trash talk his biological father, even though every instinct screamed to do exactly that. Lucas, I can't tell you what to do here, I said. Brett's your father biologically. If you want to meet him, hear what he has to say. I'm not going to stop you. But, Lucas prompted, but I need you to protect yourself, I continued. Don't expect him to be the dad you've been missing, because you haven't been missing a dad. You've had one. He needs to earn the right to be in your life, not just show up when it's convenient. Lucas nodded slowly. You're not worried I'll replace you or something? No, I said honestly. You and I have 12 years of showing up together. That doesn't disappear because your mom and I are getting divorced, and it doesn't disappear because Brett wants a second chance at fatherhood. I'm going to meet him for coffee, Lucas decided. Saturday afternoon. Just to see. Is that okay? It's your choice, I said. But I'll be here when you get back, whatever happens. Friday evening, Stephanie's sister Rachel showed up at the house. I was loading boxes into my truck, moving the last of my things out to a furnished rental I'd found near the waterfront. Rachel stood in the driveway with her arms crossed, looking like she wanted to throw hands. You're really doing this? Rachel demanded. You're just walking away? Your sister walked away first, I said, loading another box. I'm just making it official. She made a mistake, Dominic. People make mistakes. Months of mistakes. I corrected. Months of lying. Months of making our son complicit in her deception. That's not a mistake, Rachel. That's a choice. Rachel followed me to the truck. She loves you. She's terrified she's losing you. I turned to face her. Did she love me when she was on the phone with Grant Floyd at midnight? Did she love me when she walked out Tuesday to go be with him? Because that's a funny way of showing it. She's going through something. Rachel tried again. Midlife crisis. I don't know. But you're throwing away 12 years over. She threw it away. I said flatly. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Now if you'll excuse me, I have more boxes to load. Rachel left, but not before telling me I'd regret this. That I was being stubborn and prideful. That real men fight for their marriages. Real men also know when a fight is already lost. Saturday afternoon, I was at my new rental when Lucas texted me. Just 3 words. Can you pick me up? I drove to the coffee shop where he'd met Brett. Lucas was standing outside, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than his 6-foot frame should allow. I pulled up, and he got in without a word. We drove in silence for 5 minutes before he finally spoke. He spent the whole hour talking about his startup. Lucas said quietly, how it's finally taking off, how he's been so busy building something. Asked if I want to come to Seattle for a weekend, see his office. Didn't ask about school. Didn't ask about you or mom. Just talked about himself. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. He's not you, Lucas said, voice breaking just slightly. He's never going to be you. I pulled into a parking lot, put the truck in park, and looked at my son. I'm sorry he disappointed you. I'm not, Lucas said, wiping his eyes quickly. Because now I know for sure. You're my dad. Only dad I need. I hugged him right there in the truck, and he didn't pull away. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Quick and clean, just like I wanted. Stephanie signed everything without fighting. She got the house, her car, half the joint savings. I walked away with my dignity and my bars. And Lucas, though not on paper, was still mine in every way that mattered. What I didn't expect was how fast everything else would fall apart for her. It started with a phone call from my accountant, Jim, 3 weeks after I moved out. He'd been going through the books for tax season and found something off in our joint account statements from the past year. Dominic, I need you to look at these transactions, Jim said over the phone. There are wire transfers totaling about $38,000 over the past 8 months, all going to the same recipient. My stomach dropped. Who? Someone named Grant Floyd. I sat down hard in my new living room. $38,000. Money from our joint account. Money we'd both contributed to, going directly to the man she'd been having an affair with. Can you send me the statements? I asked. Within an hour, I had them. Monthly transfers. $2,000 here, $5,000 there. One big chunk of $8,000 in December, right before Christmas. The Christmas where she'd bought me an expensive watch and told me how much she loved our life together. I called David Kowalski. I need to amend the divorce settlement. It's already finalized, Dominic. She stole $38,000 from our joint account and gave it to her lover, I said flatly. That's marital asset dissipation. I want it back. David was quiet for a moment. Forward me everything. If this is what it looks like, we can file a motion. 2 days later, Stephanie showed up at my bar during the dinner rush. She looked different. Thinner, darker circles under her eyes. She sat at the end of the bar and waited until I had a free moment. We need to talk, she said quietly. About the money. I poured myself a water, leaned against the back counter. Yeah, we do. I can explain. $38,000, Stephanie. You gave our money to Grant Floyd. What's to explain? She looked down at her hands. He had debts. His wife found out about us and hired a lawyer. He needed help with legal fees. I was trying to. You were trying to what? I cut her off. Save his marriage while destroying ours. Using money that was partially mine to fund his divorce from another woman. Several customers glanced over. I lowered my voice. You're paying it back. All of it. I don't have it, she whispered. I took out a personal loan to cover some of it already. And Grant, he's not answering my calls anymore. I stared at her. What do you mean he's not answering? His wife found out about the money. She's filing fraud charges against him. HR at his company launched an investigation. He got put on administrative leave yesterday. He told me we need to stop talking, that I'm making things worse for him. The pieces fell into place. Grant Floyd hadn't wanted a relationship. He'd wanted a safety net, someone to help him manage the fallout of his own mistakes. And Stephanie had been desperate enough to believe she was special. That's not my problem, I said. You stole from me. My lawyer's filing a motion to reclaim the funds. You've got 2 options. Pay me back voluntarily, or we do this in front of a judge. Dominic, please. I made a mistake. I know I did. But I can't afford. Should have thought of that before you wired our money to your married boyfriend, I said. Now if you'll excuse me, I have customers. She left without ordering anything. By mid-April, word had gotten around. Small city, smaller business community. People talk, especially when someone like Stephanie Marshall, regional sales manager, gets tangled up in a scandal involving her married supervisor and missing company funds. Lucas came into the bar one afternoon after school, looking troubled. He sat at a table in the back, away from other customers. Mom lost her job, he said when I brought him a Coke. They fired her today. I sat down across from him. What happened? She wouldn't tell me everything. Just that HR investigated Grant Floyd for inappropriate relationships with subordinates. They found out about her, and about 2 other women in the department. Lucas's voice was bitter. She wasn't even special to him, Dad. Just one of several. That was the detail that would destroy her more than anything else. Not being the great love story she convinced herself it was. Just being one name on a list. They're saying Grant used his position to trade promotions and favors for relationships. Lucas continued. His wife hired some big-shot attorney. They're going after him for everything. And Mom's caught in the middle. Is she okay? I asked because despite everything, I didn't want Lucas to lose both parents. She's falling apart, he admitted. Can barely get out of bed. And now the mortgage payment is due, and she doesn't have a job. She asked if I thought you'd help. There it was. The question I'd been expecting. Lucas, I gave her the house free and clear. That was my help. What she does with it now is on her. I know, he said quickly. I told her the same thing. I just wanted you to know she's struggling. Not to make you feel bad, just to keep you informed. How are you holding up? I asked. Honestly, I'm angry. Lucas took a long drink of his Coke. She threw away everything. Our family, her job, her reputation. For what? For some guy who was using her and didn't even care. People make choices they can't see clearly at the time, I said. Doesn't make it hurt less. Brett called again. Lucas added. Heard about Mom losing her job. Offered to let me move to Seattle with him. Said he could provide stability. I kept my expression neutral. What did you tell him? That I'm staying here. I've got 1 more year before college, and I'm spending it with you, not some guy who shows up when things get messy. Lucas met my eyes. You're still paying for my college, right? Every penny. I confirmed. That trust fund is locked in. Your mom can't touch it, and neither can anyone else. You're going to state, and you're going to study engineering, and you're not going to worry about money. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Dad. 2 weeks later, I heard from Rachel, Stephanie's sister. She called me at the bar, sounding desperate. Dominic, she's going to lose the house. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. She can't make the payments without a job, and no one's hiring her after what happened. That's unfortunate, I said, and meant it. But it's not my problem to solve. She's your wife. Ex-wife. I corrected. She made her choices, Rachel. I gave her the house because I wanted Lucas to have stability. She couldn't maintain it. That's on her and not me. You're heartless, Rachel spat. No, I said calmly. I'm just done cleaning up her messes. She needs to figure this out herself. By the first week of May, Stephanie had moved into a small apartment across town. The house went back to the bank. All that equity, all that stability, gone because she couldn't manage the payments alone. She'd burned through her savings trying to help Grant Floyd, and now she had nothing to show for it. Lucas stayed with me full-time. Officially, it was supposed to be joint custody, but Stephanie didn't fight when he asked to make my place his primary residence. She was too buried in her own collapse to argue. One evening, Lucas and I were closing up the main bar together. He'd been helping out a few shifts a week, learning the business side. Good kid, responsible, nothing like the chaos his mother had become. You know what's weird? Lucas said, wiping down tables. I don't even miss her. Like I know I should. She's my mom. But I look at her now, and I just see someone who threw away everything good for something that was never real. She's still your mom. I reminded him gently. Even when parents mess up, they're still parents. Yeah, but you taught me something, Dad. You taught me that love is about showing up, about being consistent, about choosing people every day, not just when it's convenient. He looked at me. She didn't choose us. So why should I feel bad about choosing you? I didn't have an answer for that. Just pulled him into a hug and let him know he'd made the right call. 6 months after the divorce, I was standing in my third bar watching the Thursday night crowd when an idea hit me. Not just a business idea, but something bigger. Something that could help other men who'd been where I was. Lucas was working the host stand, seating customers with the kind of easy confidence I'd never had at 17. Between greeting guests, he looked over at me. Dad, you've got that look again, Lucas called out. The one you get when you're planning something. I waved him over during a lull. What would you think about me starting a podcast? He raised an eyebrow. About what? Craft beer. About divorce. About walking away with dignity. About what it means to be a man when your whole life falls apart and you have to rebuild from scratch. Lucas considered this. Like sharing your story. My story and other men's stories. I've had so many guys come through these bars in the past few months, sitting alone, looking lost. Divorced, separated, trying to figure out what comes next. They see me managing, and they ask how I did it. I gestured around the bar. I could reach more people than just the ones who walk through these doors. Would you talk about Mom? Lucas asked carefully. Not a trasher, I said, but to be honest about what happened and how I dealt with it. Would that bother you? He thought for a moment. No. Actually, I think it might help people. You didn't fall apart, Dad. You didn't get bitter or angry. You just moved forward. That's worth sharing. 2 weeks later, I'd set up a basic recording setup in my apartment. Bought a decent microphone, downloaded editing software, watched about 30 YouTube tutorials. My first episode was rough, stumbling over words, too many pauses. But I kept at it. I called it The Quiet Exit, Leaving with Dignity. Each episode, I'd talk about a different aspect of my experience. The moment I knew it was over. The decision to walk away instead of fight. How I maintained my relationship with Lucas. What it meant to rebuild your identity after being someone's husband for 12 years. The response started slow. 10 downloads the first week. Then 50. Then 300. By the end of the second month, I was getting 5,000 downloads per episode. Men were emailing me, sharing their own stories, thanking me for putting words to feelings they couldn't express. One email stood out. It was from a therapist named Dr. Patricia Holbrook in Seattle. Mr. Marshall, I've been recommending your podcast to my male clients going through divorce. Your approach to emotional processing while maintaining dignity is exactly what many men struggle to achieve. Would you be interested in being a guest on my therapeutic workshop podcast? I did the interview. Dr. Holbrook asked thoughtful questions about how I'd managed to stay centered, how I'd protected Lucas from the worst of it, how I'd resisted the urge to destroy Stephanie even when she deserved it. You went to therapy before you left, didn't you? Dr. Holbrook asked during the interview. For about 2 years, I confirmed. I knew things weren't right. I tried to get Stephanie to come to couples counseling, but she always had an excuse. Too busy with work, didn't think we needed it, didn't want to air our problems to a stranger. So I went alone. And your therapist supported your decision to leave? Eventually, yes. After 2 years of me trying everything to save the marriage, my therapist said something I'll never forget. Dominic, you can't be the only one fighting for a relationship. At some point, staying becomes self-abandonment. That's when I knew I had permission to let go. The episode went viral in therapeutic circles. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from other podcasters, from men's support groups, from divorce recovery organizations. The bars kept running smoothly with my managers handling day-to-day operations, which gave me time to develop this new direction. Lucas started helping with the podcast, editing episodes, managing the email inbox. He'd read messages from listeners and sometimes share the ones that hit him. Dad, listen to this one, he said one evening. This guy's been separated for 3 months. His wife cheated with someone from her gym. He's got 2 kids, and he says your episode about maintaining relationships with children saved him from making a huge mistake. He was going to trash talk their mom in front of them, but he listened to you and realized it would only hurt the kids. That's what it's about, I said. Breaking the cycle of bitterness. By month 4, the podcast had a sponsor. A men's mental health organization wanted to advertise their services. The revenue wasn't huge, but it was something. Enough to invest back into better equipment. Maybe hire someone to help with production. And through it all, I kept hearing bits and pieces about Stephanie through the Portland grapevine. She'd moved into a small studio apartment. Working retail now. Couldn't find anything in sales after the scandal. Her sister Rachel had stopped talking to her after Stephanie asked to borrow money for the 3rd time. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but I didn't feel guilty about it either. She made her choices. I'd made mine. We were both living with the consequences. August rolled around, and Lucas got his acceptance packet from Oregon State. Full ride academic scholarship, plus the trust fund I'd set up meant he wouldn't have to worry about money. He was leaving for school in 3 weeks, and I could see him starting to get nervous about leaving me alone. Dad, you're going to be okay, right? Lucas asked one morning over breakfast. Like, you're not going to fall apart when I leave. I smiled. I survived your mother leaving. I think I can handle you going to college. That's different. You wanted her gone. You don't want me gone. No, I don't, I admitted. But I'm proud of you for going. And you're only 2 hours away. You'll be home for holidays, some weekends. This is what's supposed to happen, Lucas. You're supposed to grow up and go do great things. He nodded, but I could see the worry still there. He'd been my anchor through all of this, and now he was worried about leaving me adrift. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I heard Stephanie's voice, but different, smaller, broken. Dominic, I need help, she said. I'm being evicted from my apartment. I don't have anywhere to go. Can you? No. I said firmly but not cruelly. I can't, Stephanie. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm desperate. I've burned through all my savings. Rachel won't talk to me. My parents said I made my bed. I don't have anyone else. You had someone, I said quietly. You had a husband who showed up every day. You had a son who loved you. You had a stable life. You traded all of that for something that was never real. I know, she whispered. I know that now. I see it so clearly now. Grant never cared about me. He used me for money and comfort, and when things got hard, he disappeared. And I let him because I was so desperate to feel special. Stephanie, I feel for you. I really do. But I'm not your solution. You need to figure this out on your own. What am I supposed to do? Her voice rose with panic. I can't afford first and last month's rent anywhere. I'm working minimum wage. I'm 40 years old, starting over with nothing. Then you understand how I felt when you walked out that door, I said. Except I had businesses and skills and a support system. You have to build that for yourself now. Maybe there are shelters, assistance programs, roommate situations. I don't know, but it's not my job to know anymore. She was crying now. Can I at least see Lucas before he leaves for school? To say goodbye properly? That's up to him, not me. He's got my number. If he wants to see you, he'll call you. I hung up and immediately called Lucas. Told him about the conversation. Do you want to see her? I asked. No judgment either way. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, I think I do. Not because I forgive her, or because I want to help her, but because I need closure. I need to tell her everything I've been holding in. We met Stephanie at a coffee shop 2 days later. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, eyes hollow. The confident, put-together woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Lucas sat across from her while I stayed at a table nearby, close enough if he needed me, but far enough to give them privacy. I watched my son talk to his mother for 40 minutes. Saw her crying, saw him staying composed, saw her reach for his hand and him pulling back. When they finished, Lucas stood up, said something final, and walked away. He didn't hug her goodbye. In the car, Lucas was quiet for a while before speaking. I told her I loved her because she's my mom, but that I didn't respect her anymore. That she taught me exactly what kind of man not to be and what kind of woman not to marry. I told her that Dad showed me what real strength looks like, and it's not about winning or losing. It's about how you handle yourself when everything falls apart. How did she respond? I asked. She said she understood, that she was proud I turned out so well despite her mistakes. And then she asked if you were seeing anyone new. I glanced at him. What did you tell her? I told her it was none of her business. That you'd moved on in every way that mattered. And who you date or don't date isn't her concern anymore. Smart kid. Always had been. 18 months after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a men's wellness conference in Seattle. The podcast had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. 60,000 regular listeners, partnerships with 3 major men's mental health organizations, and a waiting list for my in-person workshops that stretched 4 months out. Lucas was in his sophomore year at Oregon State, thriving in his engineering program. He came home most weekends, still helping edit podcast episodes and manage listener emails. Kid had become my unofficial business partner, and he was good at it. The conference organizers put me up in a nice hotel downtown. 200 men registered for my session titled Dignity in Divorce, The Power of the Quiet Exit. I stood backstage, adjusting my microphone, when one of the organizers approached me. Mr. Marshall, there's someone here who'd like to meet you, she said. Says he's a long-time listener. The man who approached was in his 50s, wearing a business suit, looking exhausted but hopeful. He shook my hand firmly. Dominic Marshall. I've listened to every single episode, he said. My name's Richard. I've been separated 8 months. Your episode about maintaining relationships with stepchildren saved my relationship with my stepdaughter. Her mother tried to cut me off, but I fought for visitation rights because you showed me it was possible. How did it turn out? I asked. Judge granted me continued contact. My stepdaughter's 13 now, and she still calls me Dad. Because I showed up for the fight, just like you said to. Stories like Richard's had become common. Men reaching out, sharing how the podcast had given them permission to grieve, to rebuild, to walk away from toxic situations without shame. My session that afternoon was packed. Standing room only. I talked for 45 minutes about my journey, about the decision to leave, about building something new from the ruins. Then I opened it up for questions. A younger man, maybe 30, raised his hand. How did you resist the urge to destroy your ex-wife? To make her pay for what she did? I considered the question carefully, because destroying her wouldn't have rebuilt me. It would have kept me tied to her, to the anger, to the past. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing I could do. It said, "You don't get any more of my energy, my time, or my peace." Another man asked, "Do you ever regret giving her the house?" That was a lot of money to walk away from. Not once, I said honestly, because it bought me something more valuable than equity. It bought me freedom from a prolonged legal battle. It showed my son that a man can be generous even when he's been wronged. And it meant I could start fresh without her shadow over everything I built next. After the session, men lined up to talk to me, share their stories, ask for advice, thank me for giving them a framework for their own exits. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my chest tightened. It was from Stephanie. "I heard about your conference, about how successful the podcast is. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm sorry for everything. I'm getting help now. Therapy, like you suggested years ago. Too late for us, but not too late for me. Lucas is a good man because of you. I know that now." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to respond with something cutting. But mostly, I just felt tired of carrying any remaining weight from that chapter. I typed back, "I'm glad you're getting help. That's good. Take care of yourself." Then I blocked the number. Not out of anger, but out of completion. That chapter was closed. The next morning, I flew back to Portland. Lucas picked me up from the airport, and we grabbed lunch at a diner near campus before he headed back to school. Mom texted me too. Lucas said over burgers. Similar message. Apologizing, saying she's in therapy, asking if we could have coffee sometime. "Are you going to?" I asked. "Maybe. Eventually. But not because I forgive her. Because I want to see if she's actually changed, or if she's just lonely." He took a bite of his burger. "How did you respond?" I wished her well and blocked her number. Lucas nodded slowly. "That feels right. Clean break. No loose ends. How's Emily doing?" I asked, changing the subject to his girlfriend. His face lit up. "Good. Really good. She's talking about transferring to state next year. We'll see. You happy, Lucas?" "Yeah, Dad. I really am." That's all I needed to hear. 3 years after the divorce, I stood in a church in Eugene, Oregon, watching Lucas adjust his tie in the mirror. He was 20 years old, halfway through his junior year at Oregon State, and getting married to Emily in about an hour. Yeah, maybe. But when you know, you know. And watching the way he looked at her, the way he planned their future with the same methodical precision I'd taught him, I knew he'd be okay. "You ready for this?" I asked him. Lucas turned from the mirror, grinning. "Never been more ready for anything." "Emily's it, Dad. She's the one. I'm happy for you, son." He straightened his tie one more time, then looked at me seriously. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Mom asked if she could come. I told her no." My eyebrows rose. "That's your call, not mine." "I know, but I wanted you to know why. It's not because I hate her, or because I'm punishing her. It's because this day is about Emily and me, and about the people who helped us get here. You helped me become the kind of man Emily wants to marry. Mom didn't. She taught me what not to do, and that's valuable too, I guess. But this day belongs to the people who showed up. She's still your mother, Lucas. And I've made peace with that. We have coffee sometimes. She's gotten better, actually. Therapy helped. She's working as a sales associate at a furniture store, dating some accountant she met at church, living a quiet life. But that doesn't change the fact that you're the one who raised me. You're the one walking me down the aisle." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Lucas stood at the altar looking nervous and excited. When Emily walked down the aisle, his face transformed into pure joy. I sat in the front row next to my date, Catherine, a gallery owner I'd been seeing for about 8 months. Good woman, independent, no interest in moving too fast. We fit. During the reception, Lucas pulled me aside. "Dad, there's someone here I want you to meet." He led me to a table where a man in his 40s sat alone, looking uncomfortable. Brett Randall, Lucas's biological father, who tried to reconnect 3 years ago and failed. Brett came. Lucas said simply, "I invited him, as a guest, because I wanted him to see what he missed, what he gave up, and what you built." Brett stood up, offered his hand. I shook it. "Congratulations on raising a fine young man," Brett said quietly. "I know I didn't have anything to do with it, but I wanted to be here to acknowledge what you did." "Thank you for coming," I said, and meant it. Lucas had turned into exactly the kind of man I'd hoped he would. Strong, thoughtful, capable of forgiveness without being a doormat. He'd learned from both his parents' mistakes and my consistency, and now he was starting his own family with those lessons built in. During the father-son dance, Lucas leaned in and said, "Thank you for choosing me, Dad. for staying when you didn't have to, for showing me what a real father looks like. You made it easy, son. You were always worth it. Later that night, Catherine and I drove back to Portland. She squeezed my hand in the darkness of the car. You raised a good one, she said. I had good material to work with. Stephanie's loss, Catherine added. No, I corrected gently. It was her choice. Loss implies something was taken. She walked away, and that's what made room for everything that came after. We drove in comfortable silence, and I thought about the past 3 years. The bars were doing better than ever. The podcast had become a steady part of my life, helping thousands of men find their way through darkness. Lucas was launched, happy, building his own future. And me? I'd rebuilt from nothing into something solid. Not bitter, not broken, just different. Stronger in ways I hadn't known I needed to be. I pulled into my